Hello everyone, Justin Vacula here with video number 6 of the Stoic Philosophy video series. This video will focus on Epictetus Discourses, Book 1, Chapters 5 and 6. Find me online at justinvacula.com, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. This series in this video seeks to apply wisdom from the ancient Greeks and Romans to everyday life. And we'll start here with Chapter 5, Against the Academics. It's a short chapter, so we'll lump it in with Chapter 6 here. The chapter largely talks about people who won't change their position in face of contrary evidence. How are we to react to them? So the practical application in this is how should we face these people? What should we do when we encounter people who don't seem to want to change their position when faced with some contrary information? So the chapter starts here. If a person opposes very evident truths, it is not easy to find an argument by which one may persuade him to alter his opinion. This arises neither from his own strength nor from the weakness of his teacher. But when a man, after being reduced to contradiction in the course of argument, becomes as hard as a stone, how shall we deal with him any longer by reasoning? So first, we're recognizing that people are opposed to things that seem very obvious, these evident truths that Epictetus writes about. Should we find this argument and try to persuade people if they're not going to be changed by reason to begin with? Maybe this can happen a lot today where we're involved in endless discussions online. Are we trying to persuade people to change their positions when they seem to have taken some pretty hard stances, maybe on matters of religion or politics, very personal beliefs, something they've invested a lot of time into? Are we going to find this argument and persuade them? Well, surely this change isn't going to happen overnight. For some people who are very entrenched in their beliefs, maybe it won't happen at all. So how are we to deal with this? Epictetus continues here. The deadening of the soul concerns us not a bit. When the soul itself is in such a condition that the person is incapable of following a single argument or understanding anything, we think of him in a sad condition. If a person's sense of shame and modesty is deadened, we go so far as to call this strength of mind. So here, what he's referring to is when we have this position, we're so entrenched in our beliefs, this is this deadening of the soul. Maybe people aren't concerned about this, that they're not realizing what's happening, that they've become so entrenched in this belief. They're neglecting this. They're neglecting finding reason, in finding good reasons to back up their position and responding to arguments that if they were bodily afflicted, perhaps they would seek some medical help. They would want to become better, but in this case they're not realizing their error, and maybe this makes it even harder as they're not concerned with the truth. They're concerned with upholding their own position, as Epictetus is referring to here. Can I argue with this man any longer? And what fire or steel shall I apply to him to make him aware that he has become deadened? He is aware of it, but pretends that he is not. He is even worse than a corpse. One man does not see the contradiction. He is in a bad state. Another does see it, but he is not moved, nor does he improve. He is in an even worse state. His sense of shame and modesty have become completely extirpated. His reasoning faculty, indeed, has not been extirpated, but brutalized. Am I to call this strength? By no means. So here, Epictetus referring to people who will say, oh, well, he's strong and that he doesn't change his position when some opposing evidence presents itself. Some people think this as a good sign of a person, some good character, but Epictetus is stating that no, it isn't. It isn't strength of mind to be stalwart in the face of contrary reasoning. This is a bad thing to do. This is becoming deadened. Our sense of shame and modesty are brutalized here. And he finishes the chapter. Am I to call this strength? By no means, unless I am also to call that name the quality which enables catamites to do and say in public whatever comes into their heads. So here this sense of impulsiveness is not good either. So this being very stalwart in the face of contrary evidence, in the face of contrary reasoning, this isn't good, and neither is impulsiveness good. So what is the moral here? What is what should we look for? Well, we want to take a cautioned approach to our own beliefs so that we're not to be brutalized, so that we don't have this deadening of soul, that we take care to form our positions, especially on important issues, and have good reasoning for the beliefs that we hold, so that we don't end up in this state as someone else, and not be impulsive either, that just we come to accept whatever is presented to us, to do and say whatever comes into our heads. And maybe in the modern day we see all these messages from media outlets that we're just bombarded. We're bombarded with all these stories, all these accusations, all these claims. It's very easy, especially on the internet, to just find something that comports with our worldview. That, oh, well, here's something someone's saying, so I'm just going to take this. Well, no, we should be critical of what's presented to us and be more concerned with holding the truth rather than having this stalwart disposition when there's contrary evidence. And clearly, there are many arguments for and against positions, so we're to use our judgments, I'm sure Epictetus would say, to come to a good conclusion, a reasonable, a rational conclusion here, rather than just being impulsive or deadening our souls or minds or brutalizing ourselves by holding positions that aren't tenable. Okay, so we'll move to chapter 6, On Providence. Epictetus talks a lot in this chapter about gratitude, in that man is made in accordance with nature, that we should be able to understand our own strengths of character and see what's around us, to be gracious for what we have, even though there are some negative happenings, there are some bad circumstances in life. And also there seem to be arguments here alluding to a creation, an artificer, as referenced in the chapter. So we'll deal with some of these claims here. The Stoics seem to go back and forth, but talking about nature, talking about Zeus. So some chapters in this book seem to be more of a divine, of providence, and not maybe so much so a supernatural God in the case of Christian religion or Islamic faith or Abrahamic traditions, but rather a intelligent source that created the world, that created nature, but isn't so much involved. There aren't miracles going abound, such as in the New Testament or the Old. So we'll start this chapter here. For everything that happens in the universe, one can readily find reason to praise providence, if one has within himself these two qualities, the ability to see each particular event in the context of the whole, and a sense of gratitude. So we're going to praise providence. Well, what might this mean? Might we be content with our situation? Might we praise Zeus or God? Might we simply be humble in our state as a human? Maybe people have different interpretations here of what it means to praise providence. So even for those who don't happen to be religious, we can look to nature itself, perhaps, although it's kind of a light terminology here, praising providence. We're not going out and hugging a tree here, but rather we have a disposition of mind saying, well, yes, there are great things about the human condition. I'm happy to be alive, even though there are some hardships, and isn't this wonderful that I get to experience this journey that is life. Epictetus continues here. From the very structure of such completed products, we generally infer that they must be the work of some artificer, and that they were not produced by mere chance. Does every such work then demonstrate its artificer, while visible objects in vision and light do not, in male and female, and the desire for each for intercourse with the other, and their power to make use of such organs that have been provided for this purpose? Do these things not demonstrate their artificer? Most certainly they do. So here I think that this argument from design, seeing structure, inferring a maker rather than mere chance, I think this argument is flawed, as the analogy breaks down, in that when we see a house, we have evidence to suggest that there is a builder. We've seen builders, we understand how the building process works. But when it comes to the universe and nature, we don't see universe builders, we don't see nature builders. Just because we see design, we see complexity. It may not be the case that design has happened. Surely things can be complex, but just because we don't have the answer for it, and just because we see structure, I don't think it's right to just infer that there is an intelligent creator to all of the things. Sure, mere chance, that can be an option, but there's also gradual change over time. We've understood more in modern days. So maybe the universe began from some mere chance. Maybe the universe is infinite. These are difficult questions, but just because we seem to see design, we see, oh, well, here is something, so there must be something that built it, just because we see houses, we see paintings, we infer some sort of designer. I don't think that's the right thing to do at all. We'll go on here. Epictetus talks about using our impressions, and this being specific to humans, this understanding, and not behaving as the irrational beasts. He talks about animals here. There's been talk about animals in some previous chapters here, and the differences between humans and animals. He writes, "You will find many that we share with the irrational animals. Do they also have understanding then of what comes to pass? By no means, for use is one thing and understanding another. God had need of animals as creatures that make use of sense impressions, and of us as beings who can understand that use. Is it sufficient, therefore, for them to eat and drink and rest and breed and perform other such functions as belong to either of them? But for us, whom God had granted, in addition to the faculty of understanding, these functions are no longer sufficient. For if we do not act in a proper and orderly manner, and each of us in accordance with his nature and constitution, we shall no longer attain our end." So here, a difference, a distinction between humans and animals. These animals, well, they're just the observers. They're just around, but humans can aspire to be more, acting in a proper and orderly manner, being in accordance with nature, attaining an end, whereas animals don't necessarily have that purpose. Are they having the cognitions as humans do? Are they able to make sense of their impressions the way we do? There's a difference there, Epictetus is writing. In Epictetus' time, maybe not as much as known, as I mentioned in a previous video, that primates, dolphins, seem to have higher cognition than other animals, and some similarities, the capacity to see oneself and recognize that is the case. So lumping all animals here may not be proper for us to do in our modern times with some advanced knowledge, but there's a difference. Epictetus is saying that we can aspire to ends. And what might those ends be? Well, we'll talk about that in this chapter. It seems that Epictetus is suggesting that each person can understand their own individual strengths and have these ends and find purpose and find meaning. So this is a practical application here of personal aspiration. It's saying that a person can be great if they're acting in a great way and finding a way to be great in the world. Some positive things here. He goes on, "It is therefore shameful that man should begin and end where irrational creatures do. He ought rather to begin there, but to end where nature itself has fixed our end, and that is in contemplation and understanding and a way of life in harmony with nature." So here it's understanding what is going on, being in harmony with nature, knowing our own strengths, and aspiring to personal achievement and applying ourselves, not to simply be a spectator, not to simply lack purpose, but to have purpose, to take action, and to be active in the world to do something good. It goes on here. He writes, "You take a journey to Olympia to behold the work of Thetis, and each of you thinks it a misfortune to die without experience of such things. So will you have no desire to understand and be spectators of those work for which there is no need to take a journey, but in the presence of which you are already standing?" So there are some great things in life, there are some great works of art, there are some great places, but great art, he is saying, is all around us in nature, that the world is a beautiful place, that we can have this experience, be part of it. And yes, it would be a misfortune to lack experience of these certain works of art. So Epictetus is acknowledging the importance of the arts in human creation here, in human work, in human experience, in not just working or toiling or laboring, but rather in beautiful things that can seem pleasant to us. So an argument here for the arts. And we want to be gracious that we're part of this world. While we may not travel to Olympia, for instance, but look all around us, nature is beautiful. He goes on here, a person is saying, "But there are some unpleasant and difficult things in life." And he responds, "Are there no such things at Olympia? Do you not suffer from the heat? Are you not short of space? Do you not have trouble washing? Are you not soaked when it rains? Do you not get your share of uproar and shouting and other irritations? But I suppose, by setting these off against the remarkable nature of the spectacle, you bear and endure them. Well, and have you not received faculties which give you the power to endure everything that happens? So there are some drawbacks, there are some occurrences in life that may be viewed as setbacks, some hardships that we'll deal with, but we can bear and endure these things. We have the ability to do this. And I think Epictetus is advocating that this is a mindset, an approach that we're going to take rather than simply complaining and being unpleasant, that we're going to cope with difficulties. And again, it may not be easy, and some difficulties may be quite grand, but we can overcome these because we have greatness of soul, courage, and endurance, as he explains here. Have you not received faculties which give you the power to endure everything that happens? Have you not received greatness of soul? Have you not received courage? Have you not received endurance? What concern to me is anything that happens when I have greatness of soul? What shall disconcert or trouble me or seem grievous to me? So saying that since we can overcome something, since we can draw upon our own personal strengths and that which nature has given us, part of being a human, that we can get past it, that there are going to be things that happen in our life that we don't like, and the appropriate response is to get past them and draw upon our strengths in order to do so, rather than complaining and not getting to action and not coping well and just being a spectator. Perhaps this is not the way to be. We have to understand that we can overcome hardships. We can aspire to greatness. We can be active in our coping rather than just watching everything happening around us and complaining. He goes on here speaking about a man who complains that his nose is running. And what have you have hands for, slave, but to wipe the rheum away with? But is there any good reason that there should be this rheum in the world? And how much better would it be for you to wipe it away than complain? So it's more of taking action here, that mere complaining is not good enough, that we're to do something about the troubles that befall us, about the setbacks, about the hardships. Is something as simple as your nose running. Well, it's just simply something that happens. We can overcome it, we can deal with it. Well, the nose running here is a very simple analogy. There could be some other disasters, such as our house burning down, losing a tremendous amount of money, losing a job, death in the family. But even these things, Epictetus is saying, we can still overcome, that we can deal with these things. And what the focus is to be on the coping mechanism, on using our reasoning faculty, our reason, our rationality, and just merely having gratitude and saying, well, there are some setbacks in life, but overall, life is a really nice thing, and we should have gratitude. So again, a hard message here, maybe one that's difficult for people to take, but with much contemplation, meditation, presumably reading Stoic philosophy and reflecting upon these things, we can work to better cope, to better appreciate and have gratitude, and to better handle situations in life. He goes on, Pray, what figure do you think Heracles would have made if there had not been a lion like the one they tell of, and a hydra, and a stag, and unjust and brutal men whom he drove off and cleared away? And would he have not have done if nothing like these had existed? Is it not plain that he would have wrapped himself up and slept? In the first place, then, he would have never become a Heracles, by slumbering his whole life away with such delicacy and ease. Or if he had, what good would he have been? What would have been the use of those arms of his, and his strength over all, of his endurance and greatness of mind, if such circumstances and opportunities had not stirred him to action and exercised him? So we have this great tale of Heracles, of overcoming these challenges. But if he never faced these challenges, he would have never been able to overcome them, to aspire to greatness, to be told of in stories, to be an example here for us, to recognize what is good about ourselves and applying ourselves in the world, overcoming obstacles, and having the endurance to do that, rather than just giving up or not facing challenges. We want to take action. We want to be active in society and active in the world and rising to greatness here. He continues, Bring on me now, O Zeus, whatever difficulty you will, for I have the means and the resources granted to me by yourself to bring honor to myself through whatever may come to pass. So here, continuing, we have the ability to overcome hardships. It's innate as part of the human condition. He explains here to the man, "No, but you sit trembling for fear that this or that might happen, and lamenting and mourning and groaning at what does happen, and then you find fault with the gods. For what is the consequence of such meanness of spirit but impiety? Yet God has not only granted us these faculties which enable us to endure everything that happens without being humiliated or broken by it, but like a good king and a true father, he has given them to us free of all restraint, compulsion, or hindrance, and has put them under our complete control." So everything that happens, we can overcome this. It's under our control, our reasoning faculty, and how we're to make sense of our impressions, how we're to visualize these things that can happen. It's up to us. We can overcome hardships and challenges, although it may not be an easy thing. Rather than complaining, rather than mourning, rather than groaning, we can take action. And yes, there might still be some complaining, there still might be some groaning, and it can be right in some cases to feel upset. Yes, fine, but how are we to deal with that? We're to get to action, we're to get in the world, we're to face challenges and take them on. It's a theme in upcoming chapters where he talks about bring it on so that I can face it, since I can overcome this challenge. And even in previous chapters was talking about dealing with a wrestler, that you want that challenge, that if there are no challenges, things would be too easy and we wouldn't gain much from that. He continues here throughout the chapter, repeating a lot of the same, and that draws us to an end of chapter 6. So thanks for watching. Like, share, and subscribe. Find me online, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and donate if you appreciate this content. Thank you very much. Have a good day. Stay tuned for more.